every little bit. It would be kind of like leaning in occasionally to say that you were there. I imagined skiing, which I had done some when I was a kid and not well. How your hips moved in relationship to the grade, shifting your weight to keep the slope. To say in some gravitational way that you would use all the things that poems have, words and lines and stanzas, but all of it would be pulsing. The poem would get fat for a moment, then trickle and stop, picking up over here or down there. It really did look like a sky, I thought, the falling structure of a poem. And I had a manual typewriter then, not even electric, so I'd write a stanza and fling the carriage, and it would stop more or less there, a few lines down, and I'd pick it up again. Forgetting the fact of typewriting, you really do lose how much moving down a page was like sailing. The machine actually did stop and got to work right there, like a drill, and then it's moving over the white page, beginning again, and when you stop flicking the roll that held the paper, and all of this was sound, the machine clicking and whirling and ringing too. Also the paper, its hard scraping clack. And the whiteout, the smell and the spray of it on your clothes, black jeans with faded white spots. I wore them that night, but all I felt was drunk. So then somebody comes up to her at the reading. So she's basically sitting in a pool of beer after the reading. She's given the great reading. And then, I might have something for you, said Michael warmly. He was being Irish, wanting to give me a little cheer. Michael Lally was this thin, handsome man. He had this poem called My Life. His poem was wide and tumbled through the various guises of him. Michael was straight. Michael was gay. John Ashbery called him a Francois Villon for our time, which got a lot of us reading him. Villon, not Michael. Michael we knew. He was bitter and he was kind. Michael was basically famous for being himself, which could be a thing, actually. Hold on. He was famous for being himself, which could be a thing, especially then. Later on, he went to Hollywood to be an actor. He wrote a lot of screenplays and wound up on Cagney and Lacey. That's what I heard because I didn't watch TV then. When I met him, he had just lost a beautiful woman, South American, like an ambassador's daughter, because he wasn't rich, he told the younger guy poets. Now he was an editor at Franklin Mint. I think he'd like me being gay, or at least was interested. We all knew each other then. Language poets knew Michael. He was kind of one of them. That couldn't happen now. He went to his office at 43rd and Lex. A gig was the little thing he had for me. He didn't drink, and that was something too. He used to, he said. He sat in a blue shirt in front of a wall of books. He was the boss, and he slid a pamphlet at me. And he put his arms behind himself like wings, his hands behind his head. Michael was good to watch because he was always acting. Some people are better in life than in film. Though I never saw him in film, so it might not be true. Nobody reads these books, he grinned. I shrugged. We could be snobs, but they like to own them. He turned around and drew one out. I was on Michael's show. Do you like Hart Crane? Yeah, I grunted. There was a Creeley poem that just ended Hart, so I knew I could love him. Michael opened the book, then flipping to the back. On its insides was a pamphlet for the person who doesn't read, explaining the poet's greatness. I got Hart. I covered his life, and amazingly, I got paid to read his poems. I could see in my reading that Hart was trying to write the great American long poem, and I think it was beyond him. Not because he wasn't great, but the long poem idea seems a little stretched thin, and who needs it really? But Hart kept finding patrons and getting grants. He was like a comic ingenue. He winds up completely isolated on a tropical island in a hurricane, or else getting thrown out of Mexico on his Guggenheim. He was such a drunk. Meanwhile, he is writing the bridge. Why has nobody ever made this film? He was a very familiar man. I felt I knew him. A prematurely white-haired fag, shy-faced and handsome. Wearing one of those Russian sailor shirts, he was always leaning against a tree or posing in a group. Hart distractedly touching his own face. He seemed to be gazing into another world. That interested me. My father looked that way. I figured it meant you were gay. There's one picture of me when I was 13 sitting with my friends, and I was doing it, looking through the camera back at myself, but pleased. Usually the other people in the picture actually seem to be in the world. They're stopping the balloon from floating off. He was a great poet of love. Hart produced in a flicker the blue veins he spied in a lover's breast. His twists of attention made your breath go still. To him, poetry was film, even lighter. Watching a man's hands grow not quite thingified, but resonant, meditative. You got there by looking long. All this looking compressed in a poem. He published his first in poetry, came to New York and got work in advertising through a friend of his dad's. And that young, 18 or 19, Hart was already a total drunk.